Intimacy in the Anthropocene. You're having a glass of wine with a neighbor you hardly know, while a catastrophic fire might be headed to your part of the neighborhood, so you're hoping for the best and getting to know each other. I mean, really getting to know each other. And your guest has been through hell: childhood sexual abuse, parental abandonment, a brother who can't take the abuse of his father anymore and kills himself. And your guest, she finds a way to survive, and you find a way to make poetry out of it. You can't make this stuff up. Sharon Thesen is the co-author of The Wig Maker with Janet Gallant, and Sharon's our guest today to talk about how to turn tragedy into compelling poetry. Editor and poet with a dozen books to her credit, including The Receiver. Sharon, welcome. The Receiver, indeed. Yeah,
Exactly.
before
Yeah.
in your bio, I don't think had the latest book. Is this the latest, right? The Good Bacteria, or is the Receiver?
No,
Oh,
it's The Receiver is the latest.
okay.
And then Oyama Pink Shale is comes before The Receiver and Good Bacteria before that. So it's the third book back.
So the Good Bacteria has in it The Fire, your brilliant poem, and since this book, the new book, The Wig Maker, was conceived, began during fire, maybe it would be good to have you read that.
Okay. But it's a long poem.
I,
It's
you know what? People can skip ahead if they don't want, or I could create a file with just the fire in it and have that, and people can watch it if they wanted. There are many ways to skin that fire, I guess.
okay. I should say that I'm talking about a fire, a big wildfire that broke out in 2003, August 2003, um, and broke out south of Kelowna, where we were living, as a huge lightning strike on an island called Rattlesnake Island. The fire caught there. It had been very, very dry, very hot, and so everything was primed. The fire started, and because it started at midnight or 1 a.m. or something, they didn't kind of do anything about it till it was daylight. By then, it had started taking off and proved to be unmanageable. And within 3 or 4 days, it started burning houses down in the southern part of Kelowna on that side, on the eastern side of the lake.
But there was also an astrological component to this too.
It was something to do with the proximity of the planet Mars in relation to the Earth. And so that just seemed to me a kind of almost logical uh, I don't know, connection or reason for the ferocity and aggression of the fire,
Warlike.
warlike. And I mean, there's just so many ways in which any war has its issues, and this one could be very much ecological issues. There was a lot of controversy over the fact that nobody had ever kind of cleaned up the Okanagan Mountain Park. Apparently the pine needles were up 8 or 9 feet, pine cones and pine needles. It was dried out, and so there was a lot of blame that went around after this happened. But the fire was a rank 6 firestorm at one point, and that's where you actually have fire tornadoes. The fire itself creates, as they say, its own weather, its own um, whirlwinds.
Fire NATO, they call them, right? Fire NATO.
Fire,
Fire NATO.
yeah, fire NATO, fire NATOs. Maybe they made that word up in California or
I think they did
fires
2
there.
years
Yeah.
ago, and I think another one was a cloud called the pyrocumulus cloud created by that.
Yes, yes, where you get that red, ghastly, horrible, frightening color in the sky. Mars glared in the firmament among the shooting stars, the orange moons. Mornings cloaked in terracotta smoke, yellow pears pendant in orchards, a fallen roasted aspen leaf, Etruscan artifact among the tongs and tines of supper times. Airplanes lumber upward, unfold white silk sheets of lake upon the woods, while the armed forces unpack gear and smooth cots in tidy tents in city parks. Gloom, the breathing element, deposits a half-consumed Time magazine on a parked car at the mall, and scorched pages from a first aid manual, a victim choking, a victim grasping at straws, the weather forecast, the percentage chance of rain. This means houses must be burning, though the fire makes its own weather anyway. Ferocious windstorms. Her hair, she demonstrated later, flew straight out in one direction, then suddenly, equally, straight out in the other direction as she stood in the yard, and a walloping sound, otherwise eerie quiet. They left on bicycles, fearing traffic panic. But everyone did go orderly, if terrified, and if too, followed fanatic the other's taillights all the way to Starbucks, speaking white-faced into cell phones in the parking lot. I want the house clean for the fire. To the greater scourging I offer the lesser. Windex, floor mop, sink stopper polished with vim, the whole 9 yards, the whole ball of wax. Last week, we twirled Mars to clarity inside binoculars, discussed its proximity, its palpable redness, the likelihood of life, what? Some weird looking worm or germ. And this morning, the vacuum cleaner is traveling along behind. I apologize to a pillow. I can't take you, dear, like throwing a maiden off a cliff. Well, not quite, but the sense of propitiation was there. Fire, here is a clean floor. Fire, here is an innocent cushion. A half moon wears out the night sky, buttonhole of a jean jacket worried to thinness, while Mars lounges among his rights. His stogie, a burning pine forest, held out at arm's length in order to hear better the appeals of the widows. My arms feel unattached, and threading even the largest needle, I tremble and miss the eye. The fallen off button on a folded towel near the iron in the quietness of another house itself, now hazed with smoke. In the haste to pack, the button had twirled and flipped. Darkness was about to fall. I bought flashlights and a round case of needles as if it were an ordinary errand. Helicopters above the roof sound like something being ground. On my lap, the legs and arms of the garment needing a button. The thread moves to the right or to the left like a barker's booth at the circus where you throw softballs at the passing ducks. It looks so easy. And you really want to win the large pink jaguar. Go ahead, fire. Dot with embers the patios of citizens trying to dine al fresco. Aim flamethrowers at the Forest Service, the Army, the Navy for that matter, who also came to help. The exhausted and the holdouts, make them give up. Fall ravenous upon a canyon, reveal its smoking naked contours. Imbue with your stink the fur of the cat. Extinguish dwelling places. Just go ahead, you and your nasty little freaky friend, the wind. Special effects ordered up by Mars, who sits by the pool with maidens either side, buffing his nails in bikinis. We'll do the roof lines aglow, he tells a sycophant with an iPod. We'll do the totally vaporized. We shouldn't be living here anyway. At night, coyotes howl with laughter and desire. Mars is more human. His attributes, ours. His accoutrement also. Pool, chariot, barbecue, wrath. My woods are charred, bituminous. Black bark bleeds red resin plasma. Between the standing, broiled, branchless poles, new, unwelcome views of the lake and of shocked humps of hills, self-conscious and sad, evicted from their leafy life, naked rock, empty scorched treetops, where for years no bird had, nor now would ever sing. And now, once more the wind is blowing and the fire surges upon the town and the countryside, the dear historic, what was lovely, the firs and the pines, etc., the brown rabbit hopping. The canyon road to the railway trestles where we took our brother and our mother on a Sunday or a Wednesday with its tall ears standing up. I would comfort if I could, but would have to wrestle it down and feel its scared heart pounding. A stubble of blackened shards where magpies fly try to settle in autumn light. Pine sap looks blue against bark's carbonic crust. And a spray of brown needles on the forest floor we pretend are a carpet of grasses and not a scorch of tears upon the miles of roots that smolder still in molten maze, where a bluish haze appears to mark the transit of ghosts and giants who left an arsonist's hoard heaped, extinct matchsticks leaning tip to tip.
That wasn't that long.
No, yeah, I guess I was going by the number of pages more than just the kind of flow of the poem if it was all, just written out one stanza after another.
Mhm. And there may have been as few as two stanzas on a page. Is this done because that was your writing for the day, or how did that come to be?
I'd have to go look at the original manuscript. I think I did write it that way as a sequence. So I'd write one and then I'd probably put number two at the top of the page and then write some more and then continue that way.
The sequential or the serial comes straight out of, you know, Blazer and Duncan, and then all your friends in Vancouver, um, George Stanley, George Bowring, Daphne Marlett, Fred Waugh. Although Fred calls it something sort of a relic of the 70s, the long poem, but the sequential seems to me, the serial form seems to me to be one of the most open stances in the arts, don't you think?
Mhm. I do. Um, I think that there's a kind of generosity of thought and imagination that accompanies the desire to write serially, to be, to use an overused word nowadays, inclusive, to not think that you've kind of summed it all up or uh, said what there is to say in one go, um, because we're always reaching, and it's there's a feeling, poems that sort of tie themselves up in a nice little knot at the end, always feel to me that they belong to something other than what I would call poetry. Something like, the needlework sampler you put on the wall, or the sermon, or the greeting card. You know what I mean? That
I, I,
it's sort of useful to uh, a particular purpose, um, which hopefully is not to demonstrate the sincerity and moral superiority of the poet. But I think that the world demands serial writing, and I think seriality can also happen in well, I hate to use the words short and long, when it comes to poems, because you look at a Kay Ryan poem, or something, and there's a world in there, um, and uh, or you look at like a book length poem by Ed Sanders or something. There's a world in there too. Um, so I think it's often, you'll read, or I will say, somebody's latest book, and it'll feel like the whole book is a kind of serial composition, although there's different titles and different directions it's going in, and I like books like that too. So I think what I'm saying, I think, is that, to me, seriality, sequence, ongoingness, continuation is um, an energy, to use your term, a sequence of energies, is an energy that itself is a kind of poesis, is a kind of um, recognition that you don't get to sum it all up in a few lines and then walk away. Like, you're in it, and it's in you, and so the end is not in sight. It's elsewhere, and I think that imagination is constantly reaching for that elsewhereness, and that's where some kind of truth of experience lies, not in what we think we know already. Um, and so I guess that's what I call imagination, or poetic imagination too. And that's why it's so kind of can be so um, controversial, or threatening, or disturbing, or is because of the scandal, of going always beyond the known and the given, and the assumptions that people are only too happy to keep repeating over and over and over and over. So I guess it goes toward the unsayable, always, without being resting happily and thinking it's already said everything there was to say. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
Provisional conclusion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The a sequence of energies comes directly out of Robin Blazer, so I use that as a title of a workshop, but as an homage to Robin in a way, and as a way of seeing what he did, and trying to apply it for our time. When you say this mode is threatening, um, I think about the people who, the poets, and poetry is a big house, and people can write the way they want, and nobody has to take a particular program. I'm not very programmatic. I know what I'm interested in, what excites me, and where I find energy, and I find energy in your work, and that's the main reason we're talking. But those poets who do feel satisfied with tying that neat little bow, and all the other things about that stands toward poem making, um, it's threatening to them, because you're saying, no, you really can't know it all. You really can't be definitive. There can be a provisional conclusion, but you don't know, and come back in 5 years and you'll see something's different. And that is not only, it's threatening their status as the author or the poet or the prophet. So I can see why simply advocating this type of stance toward poem making, you're going to piss some people in the community off. And I'm kind of stunned when it happens, but it happens.
Yeah, um, it does, and I think the reason for that really uh, is that people or readers or even poets themselves, um, maybe through their education or what they read, but they have this feeling of that a poem, to be a poem, has to be kind of economical or uh, pithy or something like that. Um, and and so because the long poem is not in the canon, like in school or anything, you get to a skylark, or what, I don't even know how long to a skylark is, if you get that at all, but more likely you'll get something rather conventionally interesting, um, and and manageable. And it's the unmanageability. I mean, if you, what have I got here? I've been reading around in Alice Notley's, which I think is a nice title, Disobedience, where it just goes aggressively on and on and on, right? And she's got her dreams and she's got, everything in there. And uh, I don't write that way, but some part of me is really admires the kind of commitment to to a vision or a work, that is that demanding. So yeah, but I have to say, I'm guilty of writing the one-page poem, the one that fits on the 8.5 by 11, because my early, my major years as a writer were with the typewriter. In goes the sheet. You type your poem. Getting toward the end.
Time to wrap it up.
Yeah,
what is
time
today's
to wrap it up.
epiphany? What's the epiphany so that this can be sent for an anthology? The word
Yeah,
of those poems that came to mind was, although I don't think it's a word, anthologizable.
yeah, anthologizable.
Yeah.
And so I have to, I admit I'm I write the page, the 2/3 of a page long poem myself, and so it's not to say that one must write serially, but that the the example and the presence of seriality in poetry is instructive to all poets, I think, as a kind of natural, uninhibited kind of way of allowing imagination to occur in the process of writing. And so that's good. That's good. I don't know.